Hello and welcome to Thought for Today. We live near Roundhay School, and I'm always amused at the beginning of the autumn term to see a new youngster arriving in perhaps a jacket just a bit too big, so they'll grow into it. Sadly, in recent times, they've probably had time to grow into it and out of it without having had the use of it sufficiently at school. Why do I mention it now? Well, I read in the paper very recently about a forthcoming exhibition about the Holocaust. And there was a very sad photo of a young teenager, wearing a heavy coat, not just a bit big, but 4 sizes literally too big for him. He'd come over to England in 1939 with the Kinder transport, the children sent here by their parents to escape Nazi tyranny. His father had bought this coat for him to keep him warm for years until they were reunited, which sadly was never to be as the father died in a concentration camp. I hope it did help him as he grew older, although I'm sure he was teased mercilessly at school about it. Growing into your clothes, or other things too. I heard a story, which is probably made up, about a man who set up a one-man used car selling business in the Midwest of America. He put up a sign calling it the National Tire Company of the United States of America. His neighbour laughed at him. Big idea. We'll take the name and we'll grow into it, he said. Yesterday, the church celebrated the Feast of Pentecost, or Whitsuntide, as we used to call it. Some people might remember the church Whit Walks, and it reminds me of how my grandmother, who lived quite a way away, used at this time of year to send me a beautiful new dress. And again, she always bought it, big enough for her to grow into. Anyway, back to Pentecost. It's often called the birthday of the church. We read in the Gospel of St. Luke how Jesus, after he'd risen from the dead, spent time with his chosen friends, his disciples, reassuring them, but also challenging them. They're not just to feel good about what's happened, they have a big job to do. They're to stand up and be counted as witnesses. They're to spread the good news about how God loves and forgives everybody and spread that news all over the world, starting from where they are in Jerusalem. A big idea, if ever there was one. Soon after that, at the Jewish festival, harvest festival called Pentecost, when Jerusalem was packed with pilgrims from so many different nations, those disciples experienced an overwhelming sense of God's Spirit with them, giving them the confidence to start telling that good news to all the crowds who'd gathered. That's why we see that event as the church's birthday, where it all started. When these friends, these followers of Jesus, were able to stand up and be counted as witnesses to God's love made known to us in Jesus. Of course, they weren't called Christians at that time. That all started a bit later as a nickname that people started calling them by, but they accepted it as it was a name that told people that they weren't afraid to be counted as followers, as friends of Jesus. Do people ever ask you if you're a Christian? Sometimes the answer's easy to answer if it's just a tick box on a census form. Sometimes it feels a bit harder, and we say things like, well, I try to be, and that's right. But if being a Christian is about being a friend of Jesus, loving Jesus, seeking to be like him, and to tell other people about him, well, let's take that name, Christian, and grow into it.